live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
And what's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime for the second time in as many days. We're doing two shows in one day. Of course, there was big news about the Long Island serial killer, the accused one. Of course, that is Rex Heuermann. Now authorities are saying he might potentially be connected to two more victims, and you can check that out on the YouTube page. You might notice something here tonight. The Queen of Honor is back after a 6-month hiatus. If you think it's shtick between Carm and I, which I've been accused of, all you have to do is ask Lauren and Eric what it was like before the setup. But Carm, I love you. We kissed and made up because we were arguing about some stuff today, and you're back here. How does it feel to be in Studio 1K? The Today Show has Studio 1A. We have 1K for Carm.
This is the corner of his bedroom between us, confidentially.
Carm, what's it like to be back, Carm?
Terrific, except I feel a little badly about the choice of this night of all nights.
Why is that? Oh, my mother-in-law's here.
Yeah, my partner in crime is here, just arrived. So
I think this logo is now blocking your face, Carm, which we're going to have to fix. But I haven't really talked to you in depth since you were on last 6 months ago, and that's going to change. You will now be on every week. What do you think of this new set that we have here, this new backdrop? It depicts you wagging your finger at me, yelling at me. You've got Mabel Rose, my beloved puggle of 17 years who just passed. It's got my dad's book on the night table. It's got our posters. What do you think of this? You screamed at me when I proposed the idea. You know, a Miami street artist made this. You absolutely screamed at me. You did not want me to, quote unquote, waste money. But by the way, if anyone's listening to this show for the first time, they've already tuned out. But this is not a typical episode. We're going to get to the subject matter.
I think we have a very important subject. And we should concentrate. We have, you always make a joke that if you would have to pay for these people who are coming on your show, you couldn't afford it. So they are here out of just kindness of their heart, and let them talk about the topic. Forget about our relationship. Okay, it has been sick from the get-go. So let's concentrate.
Carm, just give me 3 words on the set, and then I'll move on. Have you come to like it over the last few weeks that you've seen it?
I got used to it, and I was shocked that many people gave very positive feedback. And I like the idea that it was a street artist.
Yeah, it's very subtle, right? It doesn't really jump out at you at all, correct?
It's totally vulgar and horrible.
It's nothing like Studio 1K. So on with the show here. We've got massive news out of Colorado. As you probably know by now, because it broke a few weeks ago, but it remains a massive story. The remains of missing mom Suzanne Morphew were found more than 3 years after she disappeared back on Mother's Day 2020. So the obvious big question here is, what does this mean for the investigation? And we could not have two better guests. As a local TV news reporter, Lauren Scharf, with that beautiful Halloween background, she extensively covered the Suzanne Morphew case. She also interviewed one-time prime suspect husband Barry Morphew, who 9 days before he was going to go to trial for first-degree murder, the case was dropped. We'll discuss that. Lauren is now a public information officer for Cherry Creek School District, a PIO, and a social media manager over there. She was a former reporter at Fox 21 News, at WAFF 48, and at NTV News. So welcome to Lauren Scharf. Next up, the man with the awesome handlebar mustache. I have a feeling that STS Nation is going to approve. That is Eric Faddis. He's a former felony prosecutor and current criminal defense and civil litigator. He's the founding partner of Varner Faddis Elite Legal. I love that. He's appeared more than 150 times on media outlets ranging from Court TV, ABC, NBC, Law and Crime, and Newsmax, covering some of the biggest cases in the nation, including the George Floyd death, Alec Murdaugh, which we covered in depth, Depp versus Amber Heard, that trial. He recently covered the Suzanne Morphew death for the Denver Gazette, and also Crime Stories with Nancy Grace, as did Lauren Scharf. A special shout out here to Joanne Jetta Platypus. That's an interesting last name, if that is the real name, for becoming a YouTube member. And here he is, Catch Lisk, who's been doing all the work behind the scenes on the Long Island serial killer. Became a YouTube member. We appreciate that greatly and are happy that you're back here. Quick reminder, please, if you can, support us on YouTube and or Patreon. If you can't do that, 5 stars on the audio platform goes a long way. Let me defer to the queen here, to Carm, and then I'll get to the 2 expert guests. But Carm, you were a therapist for about 40 years. You still have your license in social work. Point blank, do you think that Barry Morphew is responsible for this crime? Are you ready to go on record?
I'm not going to answer this question right now because we have to speak a little bit longer about their character traits, about their behavioral patterns, about things like of that nature. And then we need, of course, I am not going to, he's innocent until proven guilty. And the interesting aspect for me when I was looking into this case is the personality of the people involved. And I sure have opinions about that.
Listen, I could get very emotional right now. Quick aside, typically we don't do this, but my mother is here.
Don't do this. Don't blame me. Let's go to the
As
subject.
you all know, I've been working on a book with the same title as a podcast, and it is basically my mother's Holocaust survival story, followed by life advice on major topics from friendship to marriage to aging. And I got the edits back on the book. And then they took 3 months to edit the book and then told me I had 10 days. I took 13 days and I did all the work. And
17 days.
Who's counting? And the book will be out.
She's counting.
And the book, yes, she is. The book will be out Father's Day. There will be pre-orders. And I just want to say that in rereading the book, I realized what a giant pain in the ass I am. I'm a nightmare of a son. I gave Carm a kiss. I love her to death. She always says I'm a little mean to her on the show, but I could almost cry because I torture her. I've got some slight OCD issues, and I like to whine to my mother, even though I'm in my 50s. So I just want to take this opportunity to say that, Carm, please forgive me.
I forgive you if you go back to the topic.
Okay, so a quick recap.
It's a fascinating story, and I'll tell you later. Tune in.
Carm is intrigued. She will tell us if she thinks Barry is guilty. So I want to recap this very quickly, and then we'll go from macro thoughts to micro thoughts. But Suzanne Morphew, as I said, she goes missing on a curious day, Mother's Day 2020, in the early morning. The 2 daughters, Mallory and Macy, were both out of town on a camping trip. As normal kids would do, they texted their mother Happy Mother's Day, which I just want to let you know I do the same thing. And then daughter Mallory tells her dad Barry that they cannot reach their mom. Barry eventually reaches a neighbor and poses kind of an odd question. And he asked if Suzanne's mountain bike is there, quote unquote, some people think setting the scene for what happened. Barry does not head home immediately. He drops off a shovel and some other tools. Keep in mind, he's a landscaper for his coworkers at a hotel where he had booked rooms. And Suzanne's last proof of life photo was a selfie that she sent May 9th at around 2 p.m. That is the last proof of life. And that was to her lover, a guy named Jeff Libler, a high school friend who she had recently reconnected with. So that is the background. Lauren, you covered this case extensively. Why do you think it's riveted the nation and the world the way it has? You know, every time we do this, we see our numbers rise. What was it like for you to cover it, and your thoughts on why it's become such a big story?
I mean, when people hear about Suzanne, as far as her story about how she battled cancer twice, she overcame that. She had, 2 beautiful daughters, and you know, that she had just moved from Indiana to Colorado to a beautiful place, kind of a little isolating in that area. And she just, everyone I spoke to, if they knew her as a friend or family, they just spoke so highly about her, and just how she just would light up the room whenever she walked into the room. She was someone who loved Christ, and she was very Christ-centered when she was talking to people. She just was a loving person, and a lot of people I spoke to said that, you know, they wish they could be more like her. It just, I think it hit a lot of people in so many different ways around the globe, that, you know, how could a mother, a beautiful mother, go on a bike ride supposedly and just disappear on Mother's Day, right? Why wasn't she with her family? That was kind of my initial thought was, well, where was her family on Mother's Day with her? Like, why weren't they around? Why was it the neighbor that called, you know, 911 initially? And, you know, did she truly go on a bike ride? And then I remember the very first press conference that really happened. The Sheriff John Speasy, he said, you know, she was reported missing on Mother's Day. I mean, they at that time didn't know if she had gone missing or had disappeared prior to that. You know, it was just that she was reported missing on Mother's Day.
It's a criming shame. Looks like Lauren is on. She has covered Suzanne's case beyond measure. XOXO Lauren. So people do know this. And then look who's joining us. We've got Henshi Held coming to us from Jerusalem, where he's trying to stay awake at 2 a.m. Glad you're up for Carm.
Wow.
Thinking of the great people of Israel as they are dealing with a difficult time. And shout out to Tali Schechter as well. I haven't seen her yet. Eric, to you, same question, just from a macro perspective. What's jumping out to you when people ask you about this case and why it is, you know, become such a, you know, a sought after story and a story that people are so, you know, into?
You know, I think a part of it is the locale. So it's near Salida, Colorado, where I live in Colorado. And it's kind of like the America Town, USA. It's like the quintessential American mountain town. Very low crime rate. I go there every year for a kayaking thing called FibArc. It's always so welcoming and pleasant and picturesque. And it just seems like there nothing could go wrong there. And then we all of a sudden on Mother's Day, we have this great mystery that transpires. And we have this mother who, you know, she was dealing with some issues, but overall seemed like, you know, she had a pretty good situation, and people couldn't really wrap their heads around how in this area, this locale of Salida, Colorado, such an allegedly egregious, monstrous crime took place and took the life of this innocent victim, this innocent mother, likely on Mother's Day. And so I think a part of it was just the sort of shock as to here, could this really happen here? And it did. And now we're sort of all dealing with it, not only we all in Colorado, but the entire nation.
Got to be the best handlebar mustache of any best guest. Love it. I have a feeling that STS Nation is going to chime in about that. Maui Swift, a longtime friend of the show. Ola Carm. Raul Thomas, also a friend. Love Carm and love Lauren. I don't know if Carm's going to like sharing the love, but
I will. I'm generous tonight.
And I'm just looking to see where the other love Carms were. I saw a bunch, but Carm, to you, you know, this crime happened on Mother's Day 2020. You're a therapist, again, a licensed therapist. Do you find that curious?
Well, it's very interesting because allegedly they moved from Indiana. Correct me if I'm wrong, the two experts here. They moved from Indiana to Colorado to be closer to the older daughter who went to college there. And the younger daughter was still in high school. And this is an area where people go camping and do all sorts of outdoor things. But her daughter somehow chose Mother's Day to do this and leave their mother alone. And I wonder if they were sent. I'm questioning. They left her there by herself. Were they at all clueless about issues in the marriage, or were they like stressed being around the parents because there was a tension between the parents, or were they avoid? I don't know why, but they left the parents by themselves.
Anderson Cooper, I'm going to stop you right there because you had a
He
question
always
there.
calls me Anderson Cooper. I
I'll
thought
tell you, I've been listening.
You can have a long conversation.
Lauren just disappeared. That's never a
She
good
couldn't
sign.
take it anymore.
She could, but listen, I've been listening to CNN because I've been trying to stay on top of the news, and I listened to Anderson Cooper. And as they say in South Carolina, bless his heart, man. 30 years, and he just can't spit a question out. But
I spit it out, but it'll take more time. But my understanding was that on a podcast, you can do it, you can make longer statements. And I watch your podcast, Joel, and people don't give you sound bites. They elaborate. And I took the liberty to elaborate, and you always call me Anderson Cooper, which is not the worst insult because he's very capable.
Lauren, so to my mother's point, do you think that children knew the extent to which the marriage was damaged at the point that she went missing?
So if you go back to the first initial interviews with law enforcement with the daughters, it seems to me that Mallory did not know. And Mallory's the daughter who was in college. She's the oldest daughter. And Macy did know that there was some issues with her parents and that they weren't getting along that summer. And you have to also remember this was the prime beginning of COVID. And so a lot of people, all they could do was get outdoors to kind of get a fresh air, right? And so the daughters had just finished school for the semester, and it sounded like they just wanted to go on a road trip to a couple states away from Colorado. And they were planning to come back for Mother's Day to have dinner with their mother.
Here are photos of Suzanne Morphew, obviously with her two daughters, Macy and Mallory, in the middle. Beautiful looking family, looking like the all-American family. So obviously the news came out end of September. It was September 22nd that we learned that some remains were found in Saguache County, Colorado. And 5 days later, she is positively identified as those remains are positively identified 5 days later as Suzanne Morphew. Lauren just gave us this photo, which I'm going to put up. This is where the remains were found. Eric, to you, I think you said you go down to Salida occasionally. I don't know if you're familiar with this area, which is about 50 miles away from the home. Talk to us about this area. Obviously, I worked in Tucson. It almost looks like Tucson, very remote area. What about this area? And it'd be hard to find a body there unless maybe you were given a clue to go look for it there, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's super rural out there. You've got the town of Salida, and that's like a little small mountain town. But then, 50 miles out of that is like barren nothing. And there are, it's very hard to get to some of these locations. It's not like there's a bunch of main roads just going through them all the time. And so, yeah, I was interested to hear the location as to where the remains were found. Certainly seems like someone placed them there. And I think the question on everyone's mind is who and when and under what circumstances. But yeah, I mean, if a person, I guess, was going to hide a body, that would be not a terrible place to choose. Not that I would condone that.
And Lauren, go ahead, Carm.
No, but the importance of the place where the body was found, it's important to stress that the body was buried. In other words, it wasn't on the surface of this terrain. It was not a deep grave, but a shallow grave, but nonetheless a grave. so that they know that somebody buried her. She didn't die from the elements.
Very astute point. She was found in a shallow grave, and we have Joseph Scott Morgan on the show quite frequently, a very well-known forensics expert. And I'm going to get to some quotes from him. But Lauren, sort of the same question I just asked Eric. It's a very remote area, and they were looking there. At the time, it was very confusing. There were reports that they found remains of 2 different people at the same time. The Denver Gazette reported that, and I don't know if they've walked that back, but that was the initial reports. I know they were looking for another person, but
that other body that they found, the remains were found in July, and they have positively identified them as James Montoya. He went missing in April, and he was last seen at a bar in Lakewood, and I believe they have a suspect for that. Mm-hmm. Body, and they weren't near this where Suzanne was. They were somewhere else.
There was a search for a woman named Edna Quintana, right? There was a search going on for her, but needless to say, this was a very remote area. I don't know if you're still, by the way, Martin Smallwood, who's been on my show, saying hello to Lauren. He is in Ireland, the Republic of Ireland. And he and Kurt Simpson have been working tirelessly, using coordinates, GPS coordinates, to try to track all this. So they must have been very happy in a somber sort of way to know that at least the remains were found. Shout out to Ketchup, who's a friend of the show. But Lauren, back to this remote area. I mean, you wouldn't, if you're law enforcement, you're not just going to go there randomly, right? Do you think that there was some sort of tip off to authorities that took them there to look for the remains, which is what, where they were ultimately found?
I don't know if there was a tip as far as that specific location, but I think they were definitely looking for Edna Quintana and just stumbled upon, from my understanding, they just stumbled upon Suzanne's remains rather than Edna's. Going back to that area, if you put that photo back up, I drove from the Morphew home to that area, and Highway 17, which is south of Moffett, is only about a mile or 2 from where this is. Moffett is, and Highway 17 is about a football field from where this photo is taken from. And then to my right, looking to the right of the photo, is County Road R, and it's about 30 feet, or I would say 30 yards from County Road. So it's not that far off of the main highway and County Road either. And it's a large area that they excavated, the CBI, FBI, Saguache County officials, and there was some wildflowers, and we placed some wildflowers around, and said some prayers and things like that in memory of Suzanne when I was there.
By the way, we've had Johnny Grusing on from the FBI, now retired. He's been working this case, and he told us still an active investigation, even though he's retired. But we're going to get him on here once he's able to talk. Love Johnny Grusing, great guy, great sense of humor, and the guy was an awesome basketball player back in his day for Texas Tech. Back to my sweet dear mother, Mom, the police alibi. I don't know any other 54-year-old to host a show with his mom. Every time I say mom on the podcast, it's odd to me still. But anyway, Carm. Barry Morphew tells police that he drove off that morning for a landscaping job in Broomfield, Colorado at 5 a.m. and that the last time he saw his wife, she was sleeping soundly. That was revealed in the preliminary hearing. Do you buy that, Carm? I mean, I know you don't want to give away whether you think he's innocent or guilty, but do you buy the alibi?
If he were, and I don't say he is, if he were the one who committed this crime, then the crime happened the evening before, the evening when nobody was home. He was home with her alone, and this is a very a strange variation on murder scenes, because they discovered that they found the see-through, what is it called, a see-through tube that covers needles that
The tranquilizer.
tranquilize deer.
Uh-huh.
Or I think they're deer.
Animals. An animal
They're
tranquilizer.
not Bambis, but they are deer. And that they found that in the dryer in the house. And so Barry, the husband, said, yes, he uses these tranquilizer needles because he takes antlers of these deer. And then when you go into his house, you see that there are antlers all over I guess, the family room or the whatever part of the house. And so that they felt that there is a possibility that it has nothing to do with the murder. But on the other hand, they think it might have something to do. I think our attorney in residence could take this further.
Yeah, Eric, you want to chime in? And by the way, Lauren, I just have you muted because there's a little audio hiss coming off when my mom's speaking. But I will. You can. I'll let you unmute yourself. But Eric, we've heard about there's a lot of information people new to the case might not know, but there was basically a tranquilizer casing found in the dryer. Is that a significant piece of evidence in your opinion?
If you ask the prosecution, it is because they go to Barry Morphew, the husband, and I guess the information that they receive is that Barry Morphew is well adept at using tranquilizer guns. That's something that he, as Carm was saying, that's something he does like as a hobby to get antlers or it's something bizarre like that. And so, the fact that it was in that house, the suspicion that it gives rise to is that perhaps he used a tranquilizer on Suzanne Morphew and then carried out whatever he carried out and disposed of whatever he disposed of, allegedly. At least if you ask the prosecution, that is, I think, a significant part of their legal theory. Now the defense, Iris Eaton, who is Barry Morphew's defense attorney, has essentially said, oh gosh, that was, we don't know when that capsule that would encase the tranquilizer syringe was from. We don't know very much information about it at all. It's nothing. It's insignificant. And so I guess it kind of depends on which side you believe.
Yeah, and I want to get back to Iris Eaton a little bit. I have her statement, which I thought was a little strange, and I'll ask you about it. But Eric, you emailed me prior to the show saying, I thought it was interesting that prosecutors had not recharged Barry yet after finding Suzanne's body. Can you elaborate? How come?
Totally. So, just in terms of the timeline, the prosecution didn't even charge Barry Morphew until a year after Suzanne had gone missing. And there was a lot that happened during the pendency of that case. The prosecution ultimately files a motion to dismiss 9 days before Barry Morphew is set to go on trial for first-degree murder of Suzanne Morphew. And in that motion to dismiss, I've read it, and it appears several times. It says, hey, we don't have a body. We don't have a body. We want to dismiss this case until we have a body. And so really what that was telegraphing to people reading it was, once we find this body, we're going to bring it. We're coming back at Barry Morphew full steam. And that hasn't quite happened yet. And so I think a lot of legal experts who have commented on it were a little bit suspicious as to why. If that was really the last puzzle piece that the prosecution was waiting on, why have they not yet recharged Barry Morphew?
Is it okay? When they dismiss the case, I now learned the new term, without prejudice. It means that in this dismissal, implicitly, it's stated that if they have more evidence, they can start a new, open up a new case. Correct?
Yeah, Carm, that's exactly right. Yep.
Now, I don't know anything, but I like to talk about things I don't know anything about. So I think they didn't arrest Barry yet because they are doing tests on the body. I think they are doing all sorts of forensic tests. And I saw this very interesting comment by this famous Dr. Baden, who was the head, what was he?
You
The
met
head?
him at CrimeCon, Carm. He's a
Yeah,
famous
I met
forensic
him, but what
pathologist.
was his title? He was the
Forensic
head
pathologist.
pathologist.
Yes.
And yes, I have a picture with him as the two oldest people there. And he stated that even though it's a little gruesome, but the actual bones are all that remains. So it will be harder to conclude if there was an assault, if there was choking, if there were other ways of committing this murder. But if, for example, if they found clothes with her clothing on her, that would help them, because they could see different things like blood, DNA, and so forth on her
Carm,
clothing.
you're stealing my thunder. You went over to the next part of the rundown here.
I always do that to you.
I'm glad you brought it up. You're trying to show everyone how much you have learned about
Because
this
he
case.
always says to me, "Did you do your homework?"
She's
So
got
I
her
have
notes.
to
I
prove that
I see you looking at your notes. Look at this, Carm. Space Coast, sound the Carm alarm. I actually love that. Yay, Carm. Every day I get to see Carm is a good day. Then we've got a couple of Laurens. Queen Carm is in the house. Baba by the sea. Carm.
Let me tell our two wonderful people.
Look, Michelle is in South Africa. By the way, Michelle just had a baby girl. Shout out to her. Carm.
I just let
love
me
Carm.
orient the
Welcome
people
back,
on our
Carm.
panel.
Carm, nice to see you. You're good for business, Carm. We have to bring you on more
No, but
often.
I have to tell you why they are so impressed with me.
Why is that?
Because I'm 84 years old. I was in August, I was 84 years old, and they are amazed that I still can breathe in and breathe out. I don't have to do anything else.
Happy belated birthday, Carm.
Thank you.
And look at this fuzzy pup, the last one for now. Carm is beautiful. I love her. Lauren, I went to high school with Caroline Scharf, so I always want to call you Caroline in case I do, just so you know.
Okay.
But Lauren, are you surprised that this investigation has not been reopened yourself?
I'm not. I think, I mean, they went through such a long period with the last go around, and there were so many hiccups and mishaps and things like that, that whoever's going to file charges to against whoever, they better get it right, right? They have to take their time with the evidence they have, with, whatever they collected at that site. They need to make sure that they got every piece of evidence or bones or fragments of bones or anything from that site. And they have to kind of put it back together, kind of, right? And double check and do all the toxology, or I can't say that word right now, but
toxicology.
Yes, that report, as well as the autopsy, get everything together. Because remember, when you press charges against someone, the time is going there. I mean, it's going immediately after you press charges against someone. And so I think they're going to be very meticulous and very careful with their investigation. Cross every T, dot every I, make sure everything is in order, because you got to remember the speedy trial is going to start right when they press charges against someone. And so it could they got to have everything ready to go. And remember, last go around they didn't. They everything was disorganized. All the terabytes of information and all of that was not organized well. People couldn't find things. So I'm hoping they do take their time. If it's a year from now, great. If it's 6 months from now, okay. If it's 2 years from now or whatever, let the investigators do a really good job so that Suzanne and her family can get justice.
Yeah, Carm, look at this. Old lady Snoop. I'm an unabashed Carm sycophant. Hi, Carm, missed you. Go, Carm, go. I can't read too many of these. We'll never get through
Okay,
the show.
careful, guys. At a certain point, he becomes a little competitive with me and becomes a little jealous.
Yeah, that is true. To you, Eric, there's a prosecutor, and hang on one sec. I'm just going to go ahead and remute you, Lauren, real quick, just because there's. So there's a prosecutor in Colorado who I don't know, but you might, and he was interviewed by the local Denver station. His name is Ryan Brackley, and he came out and he said, "Here's the quote: You always want fresh eyes. You always want new ideas, new people looking at these cases." Ideally, in a cold case, you're building off the work by prior investigators. You're building off the narrative and the theory. I don't think that it makes a lot of sense in the Morphew case, given the history. But basically, he was saying to view it as a cold case because it needs new eyes. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, no, Ryan's the homie. We do media stuff together. He's great.
Okay.
I agree with them largely because the folks who were on it before, not to be disparaging, but there were some mishaps, there were some errors, there were some issues with how they handled the case. And that's at least one of the reasons why it was dismissed. There are other reasons, including court rulings that were adverse to the prosecution. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense to get some new eyes on it. Now, that county has brought in prosecutors from a number of different jurisdictions to get their eyes on it. I imagine they've had multiple investigative agencies. And so, one more can't hurt. And perhaps that new sort of perspective could be what this case needs to get it over the hump and get it to a reasonable likelihood of conviction, which is not where it's been throughout the pendency of the case, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Eric, just point blank, did the prosecution, did the state botch this from the get-go?
Botch is such an ugly term, but I will say that mistakes were undoubtedly made, and in fact, they're documented in the court record. There were some pretty elementary duties that the prosecution has in terms of disclosing what's called exculpatory information to the defense, information that could be favorable to the defense, and the prosecution failed woefully at that, and the judge spanked him for it and really gutted their case. And so, there's a lot that has to be done to kind of put this back together and salvage what we have. But with these new developments and with new fresh eyes on it, I think there's at least a potential for that to happen.
Look at this, Carm, from Patricia Burns, also a friend of the show. Has Carm had plastic surgery? She looks fab. Carm, anything I need to know about? You getting some
Thank you for
injections?
saying that, but I don't believe in it. My mother said no elective surgery 100 years ago, so I still don't do elective surgery. No, I don't have anything, and thanks. This lighting is very good because it hides all your wrinkles. But in any case, we are sort of in our discussion implicitly saying that it is Barry, the husband, because we are saying with the first time he got away, now he that maybe it's him. But let's remember there is the possibility that it's somebody else.
There's always that possibility.
No, but there is, in this case, didn't they find some kind of a match?
DNA. Carm, don't get too ahead of me here, but yeah, they did find some DNA. We'll get to that in a minute. Murray Muncie, more importantly, that is an epic stash, followed by it's a great mustache. Carm, what do you think of the mustache?
I think he looks terrific, and he's, I'm sure, an excellent lawyer, and I'm focusing on his professional.
Carm, you told me I better shave this week. You called me. You said, is that because
he's not my son, and I think it's very becoming on him.
Yeah,
but
thank you, Carm. Yeah, is it because my beard hair is gray and white, and I'm getting older? Is that why?
Yes, I don't like the white.
Okay. Look at Henshi held in Jerusalem. Please tell Carm I'm so happy she's back. There you go. So, Lauren,
I have to be alive. I don't have to. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Lauren, to you. So as Carm astutely pointed out, Suzanne Morphew's body is found in this shallow grave, but there was an attempt to hide it. But Joe Scott Morgan, who again we've had on the show and is a very well-renowned forensic expert in forensics, he said that the body was scattered by the elements, and that because of that, any significant amount of DNA would have been lost. Here's a direct quote from Joe Scott Morgan. Right now, what I believe they're probably struggling with is the fact that they don't have any soft tissue to work off of. The reason that's a problem is any kind of trauma. For instance, if we have someone that's been stabbed or beaten or shot, you'll see focal areas of hemorrhage. You can get a sense for the dynamic of the injury, but when you're down to a skeletal remain, and I suspect that for 3 years in an exposed environment, that's what they're dealing with. That layer of potential evidence is vanished. How problematic is it or not, do you think, for investigators that basically the body withered away and all that was left were bones? Is it a major issue in your, I mean, if she was shot, Joe Scott Morgan is saying that potentially they could see a gunshot wound in let's say the skull. But are you concerned, now that you're not a reporter, that her body was found in this condition? Oh, let me unmute you. That's my fault. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
I mean, I think body is better than no body. I mean, it's giving a piece of closure to the family that they didn't have. Speaking with some of the family members, they told me now I can officially say that my sister was murdered rather than just disappeared, right? So I think that's a piece of it. And I think it's good. I mean, whatever they have is better than nothing, right? And especially with wanting to file other charges, they needed significant evidence to reopen this case, and now they have it.
Yeah, great point. So Joe Scott Morgan went on to say that harsh conditions obviously make it tougher to recover any kind of evidence. Eric, to you, this is another direct quote. If you're looking for transferred DNA, whether it be anything related to a body fluid, let's just say that this was some kind of sexually motivated attack, you're not going to find it now. But he went on to say, before I get there, he says, in my opinion, all that is going to be gone unless they have a garment, which my mom mentioned, that they have recovered. But he went on to say that the environmental factors could make it more difficult to ultimately convict or clear someone of her murder. Is this a big problem for Barry Morphew? Because now they can't, there's a chance that they can't definitively clear him. By the way, before you go, Laura Waldy, she is amazingly generous, just gifted 10 memberships for Survive the Survivor. Appreciate that. Frankie Figs with a Carm emoji. Bonnie Lee Lopez in a chilly Vermont. Our beautiful Carm is back. Go ahead, Eric. So is that a problem for Barry?
In a sense, it's absolutely a problem that they found the body of the dead person they're claiming he killed. Clearly, that's a problem. But also, it sort of takes away some potential defenses that Barry Morphew's legal team has at least hinted at. When we have these disappearance cases, in order to prove murder, you got to prove the person died and didn't, go off gallivanting with her, with another gentleman, perhaps, and started a new life, didn't commit suicide. There are these potential defenses that his defense team could have hinted at the upcoming trial, if there is a future trial, that they're not going to be able to do anymore. So I think that this development does sort of hamstring the defense in terms of eliminating some potential defenses they could have raised with the jury. They could have planted a seed of doubt in the jury's mind as to whether this may have been suicide or may have been her, going to start a new life in Ecuador or something like that. They can no longer argue that.
Jody Johnson says, I usually don't have good luck, but I do today. I'm back on the same day as Carm.
Joel.
Go ahead, Carm.
Speaking of Carm, I think there is an interesting psychological underpinning to this story.
Love it. Go ahead.
And I am not jumping into any conclusions, but just bringing out certain aspects of the relationship of the husband and wife. They were high school sweethearts. He was a baseball star in school. He was going to go, I think, I think the team was called Blue Jays.
Toronto Blue Jays.
Toronto
Yes.
Blue Jays. And everything was going the right way. And then he had an injury. And then they went to college and got married. And they lived in Indiana, I guess, near their families. And slowly, the personality of the wife and the husband is sort of revealed, as in a novel, that the husband was a very macho outdoorsman, hunting, which is kind of appropriate, I guess. In certain states, they do it more than in certain other states in America or certain areas. And he was a hunter, and he was tough, and he wanted to be in control. This is how they describe him: wanted very much to be in control. And allegedly, she was very soft and sweet and pliable and emotionally available and so forth, and was becoming more and more unhappy, according to her sister, who describes this, and according to her best friend, who describes this. And at this point in the marriage, when this tragedy happened, the murder happened, and again, I don't say it was the husband, but she wanted to get divorced. And even her affair, like some people make a remark, oh, she had affairs and he had affairs. And I think that the reason they were both into affairs is because she was so unhappy. She was like, she found a high school, somebody she knew from high school, and she started to have an affair with him.
Carm, I didn't realize she was as religious as Lauren says she was. Do you think she was conflicted because she was such a religious person having this affair?
I didn't read about that, but you would imagine she was. But the point was that men who need to control their wives, and they need to control, sometimes they cannot handle when the wife wants to leave.
By the way, Carm, neither here nor there. I'm gonna definitely get us on Anderson Cooper 360 for the book launch, and it's going to be hilarious because it'll be the longest segment in history with the two of you asking each other questions. Look at this, Mom. Yala says, "Wow, Joel, that was really sweet. The first time anyone has ever said that I was sweet."
Yeah, they always say that he's very mean to me.
And look at Black Widow coming to us from the Republic of Ireland. We know you're a moan. I love that. That must be their word for a whiner. We know you're a moan, but we love you for it, Joel. So we learned we don't use that word here.
Don't encourage his moaning.
Lauren, back to you. And I've got you muted, so I'm going to have you unmute yourself here. So Joseph Scott Morgan, here's another quote. He says, "I can't imagine that there would be something there that would lead him to being excluded off of the suspect list." Same question to you. Do you think right now that investigators are kind of circling the wagon? Do you think this is going to wind up back with the focus on Barry Morphew ultimately?
I don't know if I can say that because I'm not looking at the evidence that they're looking at, but I definitely think with the remains being found in Saguache County, that's, new eyes on the case, right? And El Paso County coroner is, doing the autopsy. So these are fresh people that, weren't involved in the previous trial or preliminary hearing and all that of, a couple of years ago. So, I think that breathes a new life into this case. And I'm hoping also whoever does look into pressing charges against someone, that they start from fresh, that they don't look at the previous arrest affidavit. They just kind of go off of what they know from the evidence that they've collected.
Eric, to you from Murray Muncie, who happens to love your stash. The random DNA captured on her helmet, bike, and in her car are throwing me off. I have to be honest. I didn't know that it was found on her helmet. I thought it was just on the Lauren, you're shaking your head no. I thought it was just in the car. Yes. Okay. Sorry. So Lauren is confirming what I thought. I'd never heard of the. So there was foreign DNA though, Eric, found in the car, I believe, on the glove compartment, and I think that's what's kind of thrown a monkey wrench into this for a lot of people. From a legal standpoint, you're a prosecutor, felony prosecutor, and now a defense attorney. What kind of problems does this present for the state?
I think huge problems, because you look at the DNA, and allegedly, from what I've read, it was linked to 3 sex assaults investigations out of state. And so, my gosh, who is this person that was in Suzanne Morphew's vehicle who is linked to 3 other sex assaults allegedly?
Partial DNA. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah. So Lauren, when you say that, I mean, and I'll get back to you in a second, Eric, but Lauren, when you say that, no, it could be DNA from, mechanic or something who once worked on the car. Is that right, Lauren?
It could have been someone brushing up against someone else and then touched her glove compartment working on her vehicle. Yes. It could be, it's very minute DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so Eric,
I don't understand partial DNA. It's like, halfway pregnant. I don't understand,
I
what.
think that's
You
I don't think you can
know what
compare
does
those
it
two.
mean, partial?
well, it's like touch DNA. That's what's going on with Brian Koberger in Idaho right now. That it was DNA, touch DNA. It's not as as solid a piece of evidence as actual DNA. But Eric, we cut you off there.
Eric, can that be presented in court?
I'd have to read the actual DNA report and see how sound it is, but my inclination is that defense would jump all over that and would say, my gosh, who is this, alleged sex assaulter 3 times over who is in Suzanne Morphew's vehicle? Now, as Lauren points out, it's not conclusive that there was another person in that vehicle, but it's certainly suggestive of it. And I think it just, as the commenter put it, it's throwing people off because it doesn't fit with the prosecution's narrative that this must have been the husband. And so I think that there are still so many questions that they're up in the air. And from a legal perspective, questions often are equivalent to doubt. And is that reasonable doubt in an upcoming trial? I guess that's what the jury would ultimately decide.
Mo Hartman here. Domestic violence was spiking globally at the time of her disappearance during the COVID pandemic. I guess people couldn't handle being with their spouses. I loved my time with my spouse because she might be listening, and her brother-in-law is definitely listening, and my mother-in-law is in the house tonight, visiting from Los Angeles. Investigators, Lauren, they became suspicious after Barry is seen on surveillance video throwing stuff away. So while the DNA might help him, this foreign DNA, he's literally seen on surveillance camera just doing really strange things. How much does that hurt him, do you think?
I mean, they asked him, what were you throwing away? And, sometimes he couldn't recall. It just is, why did you have to stop at 6, I think it was 6 different locations to throw away items? Why did you have to make that many multiple trips in a single day? And it was the morning, the trip to Broomfield, Colorado on Mother's Day. So it's like the timing of things. Why so often that you made so many trips? And why different locations? Why didn't you throw all of the things in one trash can? Stuff like that is curious.
Yeah. Eric, back to you. According to this 131-page arrest affidavit, which is obviously a very lengthy arrest affidavit, investigators believe Suzanne died sometime after she sent a message with her phone, just after 2 p.m. on May 9th. Early the next morning, Barry leaves for Broomfield. They cite in this arrest affidavit data from both his cell phone and his truck, and what the affidavit described as numerous discrepancies, as Lauren was just saying, in his answers to questions as they built the case against him. They also pointed to evidence that Suzanne had told him she planned to leave him, something he had initially denied. It seems to me like there's a lot of smoke here. And when you speak to detectives, I just had two of them on to talk about the Long Island serial killer. They both said this today. They don't believe in coincidences. There's too much coincidence going on here. Is there too much smoke, in your opinion? Real quick, Vintage Mama, look at this. Everyone's gifting memberships. Love it. Thank you, Vintage Mama 3. Go ahead, Eric.
Raises a lot of eyebrows, a lot of red flags, no question. And when you look at Barry Morphew's actions, they don't really align with what he's claiming in the public and to investigators. He's claiming that he thought Suzanne Morphew had just disappeared and she's going to come back at some point and we're going to be reunited as a family. But then he also gets a new girlfriend. He votes on behalf of Suzanne Morphew. He pursues a guardianship for her. All of those things are totally inconsistent with someone expecting that their spouse is going to return. And so I think that a lot of these discrepancies, a lot of these inconsistencies are going to be problematic for Barry Morphew. Now, the thing is, are they conclusive? No, they're not conclusive. But when you build up enough of those, do those begin to rise to the level of beyond a reasonable doubt? I think that's really what the prosecution would pursue should this case go to trial.
Lauren, obvious question to you. You interviewed Barry. Was it just one time? And what was your, I don't know, what was your gut telling you during and after that interview?
I'm trying to count how many times. I spoke with him multiple times on the phone and then met him in person once. And then I would say maybe 5 times altogether we spoke.
Tell us a little bit about it. What physically, I mean, this guy was drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays. Big guy. Does he have a presence? What was he like when you first met him?
Yeah, he is someone who goes to the gym. He was soft-spoken, kind of wanting to calm the situation that was going on outside of his house. And, just kind of, it was before the search, the hundreds of people were coming to Salida to do the search. It was before that when I spoke with him face-to-face. And he was kind of talking about how, Suzanne's side of the family was just doing this for a publicity stunt, and that they hadn't spoken in years. And then I had talked to Andy Mormon, Suzanne's sister, and he said, no, we saw each other for Christmas last year and things like that. And he had shown me proof of their photo together outside, in front of the Christmas tree and everything. So, he was very concerned with what people were thinking of him. And he was blaming the media for that. And I tried to tell him, listen, your wife went missing and you've only done one video of yourself pleading to people. And that was a week after she went missing. And then since then, it was like radio silent. And typically with a family that has a loved one that goes missing, they are wanting media attention to keep their loved ones in people's minds and to make sure that, anyone and everyone that could potentially see her maybe abducted or out on the street or anywhere, that they could recognize her and then call authorities to say, hey, she's found, here she is. And there's something that I'll never forget whenever that summer happened after Suzanne was disappeared, anytime a female remains were found, I would immediately call that sheriff's office up and say, hey, can you confirm that was Suzanne Morphew? Can you tell me if that was or was not Suzanne Morphew's body? And some of these counties in Colorado didn't even know who Suzanne Morphew was. And I'm thinking to myself, am I the only one that is trying to look for Suzanne or ask about her? I just didn't understand why it seemed so small and as far as like people were only talking about it, it seemed like in Salida and in that surrounding area rather than statewide and even nationwide. And these were counties like next to Chaffee County that were having women that were found, right? And I was asking them about it, and they they hadn't even heard about Suzanne Morphew. So that was odd to me.
And context here is really important. Mo Hartman says Colorado was in a stay-at-home order. We forget. We have short memories. So it'd be, I mean, if you're going to be a criminal, you're not going to be paying attention. That would be my defense if I was a defense attorney to that. But it's important to remember the context. Going to read this comment very quickly. Then I want to get, Carm, your take on what Lauren just said. Martin Smallwood, again, he's part of this group called Hope Rocks, and they've been basically tracking all of these movements. He says Barry went to Crestone according to the locations from his truck. To get to Crestone, you have to drive through Moffat, which is exactly 2 miles from where Suzanne's remains were found. Again, a lot of coincidences going on here. Carmela, you're the therapist on the panel. You just heard Lauren say that when she interviewed Barry Morphew, he was kind of more concerned about his own image. He put out a video, but he really didn't get too involved in the search. Does that ruffle your feathers? Does that raise your radar at all about his behavior?
Well, I would like every man, if his woman disappears, to kind of react, in a very dramatic way and act very, very upset and carry on. That would be my fantasy of the appropriate behavior. But not everybody. There are people who are stoical. They are stoics. They just don't. This guy was very other oriented, that he was concerned so much what others will think of him in the community or in his surroundings. I personally see that he was a little too preoccupied with that's what you just said, that he was a little too preoccupied with what other people think. And on the other hand, he tried to kind of forget about it and move on. And what I want to bring up, just one more point that I'm curious about. The daughters are not little girls anymore, right?
No, they're college or beyond college now.
No, they're not beyond college, but they're college, and they did not question. They immediately were on his side.
Carm, you're reading my mind tonight. By the way, I put in all that background information about the affairs because I knew that was going to interest you. My next note right here, you always say we have ESPN. Daughters
Not
by
ESPN.
I know.
SP.
I know, Carm.
Okay, ESPN. Okay,
but daughters by his side. What do you make of that, Carm, since you are the therapist, that they are standing by his side? My father sadly has passed away, but if you killed him, I might stand by your side too, Carm, because you're that important to me. But what do you make of the fact that the daughters are sticking up for dad?
Well, it could be that it's an unimaginable thing for them, and it cannot even penetrate, their brain. They cannot even fathom. I would like to hear what the people think. Why were the daughters?
We're going to get there. I've got Carm. I ask the questions, my show, and then you can participate.
Well,
Carm.
as I said, they cannot even remotely accept that their father would do something like that.
Denisha here says Carm is way better. By the way, that happened with Chad Daybell out of the Lori Vallow Daybell trial. They stood by the father who's about to go on trial for double murder and will likely get convicted the way Lori Vallow did. Denisha Burdell says Carm is way better than Anderson Cooper. I smell another. Yep. I think we're going to have a Carm with the greater sign and Anderson just as the shirt. That is a graphic shirt. Carm, I would like you to respond to this comment. Michelle Abbott, Joel must be one of the hardest working YouTubers, always bringing us lots of great content.
Well, Joel wants me to say that I am very hard on him, and I am not that impressed by how hard he's working. But actually, I am, and I tell him that I'm impressed, and then he wants me to tell him again, and the third time I refuse to tell him.
Slightly dysfunctional relationship. To you, Eric. So back to some of the legal issues here. The judge, as my mom astutely pointed out, dismissed the case without prejudice, which basically means they can bring charges again. But then Barry, in all his hubris, he filed his own $15 million civil suit. He's basically suing everyone related to this prosecution. Does he stand a chance of winning that case? And even though publicly no one can ever say this, will they look to prosecute him once again because of that?
You know, I think in order to win those civil lawsuits that allege police misconduct, wrongful arrest, wrongful prosecution, you usually have to win the underlying criminal case in order to win the subsequent civil case against the authorities. And here, it's still an open question as to what's going to happen in that underlying criminal case. You know, and I think part of the lawsuit could be trying to affect the social narrative around the case. And, you know, things had been so negative for Barry Morphew. And I think that this was maybe sort of his counterweight to say, whoa, wait, I'm the victim here. And whether that's accurate or is up for debate. And then in terms of, you know, whether they would punish him for bringing that case, look, we all like to think that law enforcement is going to act neutrally and unbiasedly. And the truth is they're humans in those positions. And would this sort of stoke their ire and cause a response from law enforcement? I don't know. It's hard to say, but it's at least there's at least the specter of that, which I think is concerning for other reasons.
Yeah. There's an interesting comment here, Carm, in response to what you said. That move to Colorado from Indiana was not to follow Mallory to school. Barry was running away from his bad business deals. Who pulls up stakes and follows kids to school? That's an interesting point. Back to you, Eric, because so the defense attorney, who's very well known in Colorado, Iris Aton, basically when the remains were found, immediately put out a statement and said that the family's devastated, their heart is breaking. But then she went on to say, and I quote here, "From what we know, Barry is as innocent as he was from day one." That is very bizarre wording. I'm obviously a former reporter. I'm an observer. That doesn't sound very convincing, especially not from a defense attorney. Was that like a faux pas? What do you think went on there?
You know, I have a great deal of respect for Iris Eaton. I think she's an outstanding attorney. And you know, was that the best wording? Like you said, that sort of raises some eyebrows. And it's like, from what we know, but, you know, not referencing all the stuff the police don't know, which I'm sure there is a lot that defense probably knows, to which law enforcement is not privy. You know, I thought it was a curious way to word it. You know, she's doing the best she can for her client. I firmly believe that. But has she ruffled some feathers? Absolutely.
By the way,
by the way, Joel.
Yes, ma'am.
It was covering her legal derriere.
Yes, her legal. You're right. D-Mart says, I read that the boneyard is also used to dump elk and deer. What's interesting is Lauren Scharf told me that is not the boneyard. Is that right, Lauren?
Well, I've heard this too, that some folks in that area consider the boneyard being for a dumping of like carcasses and such.
And we're going to start to wrap in a moment because Carm told me keep it short, and we've already gone over our time. But a couple more quick things, and then we will, in fact, wrap. Barry Morphew didn't just speak to Lauren Scharf. He spoke to ABC News in his first network interview. And Lauren, he said, and I quote here, prosecutors have got tunnel vision, and they looked at one person, and they've got too much pride to say they were wrong and look somewhere else. I don't have anything to worry about. I've done nothing wrong. Did he say similar things to you?
Yeah, I mean, he was blaming, I mean, he even straight up said to me one time that the FBI lie. He was, you know, telling me that you can't believe everything you hear from investigators, things like that. You know, I do want to point out, like, why was it that he did that network interview after he was dismissed of charges? Like, why wasn't he doing that as soon as Suzanne was missing and the girls, right? That was something that I didn't understand, but he always told me that they were a private family. So,
by the way, Carm, I'm dissecting this comment that Barry Morphew made on ABC, and he says, speaking about the prosecutors, they have too much pride. He could almost be speaking about himself, and he adds, I don't have anything to worry about. I've done nothing wrong. It's almost like he's convincing himself. Am I reading too much into it, Carm?
Well, maybe we are both reading too much into it, because I painful as it is, I have to agree with you.
And then last but not least here, Melinda Moorman. Do you know who she is, Carm, with all your research?
No, yeah, it's her sister.
Very good. She was interviewed by a Colorado radio station, and she said, and I quote here, Carm, we'll get your take. She definitely made implications that she had concerns about her safety, and the condition of the relationship had, I think, deteriorated quite a bit over the last several years. Does that sound like her sister is saying it was a cry for help to you?
Yes, yes. I told you she was at the point where she told him she's leaving him. And that we saw in many other cases. I'm not generalizing, but we saw it in other cases where people who need this, as I mentioned earlier, need this control. And it's when the wife wants to leave, that's when it's the most dangerous time.
Shout out to McSpunky, who just gifted an other membership. The guy is one of the most generous people I know. Thank you, McSpunky, who I like to call MC Spunky. And Murray Muncie says, thank you, Lauren. You are a wealth of information. Becky Ireland, welcome back, Carm. Eric Faddis, man, I hope this guy comes back on my show frequently about other topics as well. He is a former felony prosecutor, a current criminal defense and civil litigator. He's the founding partner of Varner Faddis Elite Legal. Does Varner have a handlebar mustache also?
No, that's my wife. I'm glad she doesn't.
Oh, that's a good thing. That's excellent. Glad she does not either. That's good to know. He's been on them all: Court TV, ABC, NBC, Law and Crime, Newsmax. The list goes on. And he was also on Crime Stories with Nancy Grace, who I gave a nice, sweet hug to at CrimeCon. She's very sweet.
I have to tell you, when I heard that the two of you were on Nancy Grace, it was a kind of intimidating.
There you go. But Carm, you held your own.
Well, I have no choice.
Eric, how does this tail end, at least this part of it? Do you think we see those charges you were asking about delivered back to Barry Morphew? Is he going to stand trial ultimately for this?
You know, I think Lauren's right that the law enforcement is sort of dotting their I's and crossing their T's, making sure they have all their ducks in a row, because they haven't before in this case. It's been a problem. And I think that's what they're doing now. And I think so long as the conclusions they draw tend to implicate Barry, even if they're not conclusive, I do think they're going to come back with this. There is so much social pressure here in Colorado on law enforcement to get justice for Suzanne. And I feel like the law enforcement believes that they know who did this. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see charges filed. Now, how that trial ultimately goes is anyone's guess, and probably fodder for another show.
Interesting. So charges could be coming. Strega T, OMG. Can't believe I made it to a live. Love you guys from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. One of my favorite places. I was actually just whining to Carmela that I want to take my 3 little kids there for the winter break, because we live in Miami, and she told me I'm out of my mind, and then called me a few other names and said, really bad idea. So we will continue to argue about that. Patty Davis said, love seeing Carm back.
I have to tell you, if you are divulging our private conversations, it had nothing to do with Montreal. I was there. It's a beautiful city. It had to do with some other things.
By the way, Carm speaks 6 languages, one of which is French. Joel,
oh my God! Listen, I have to tell you, this has nothing to do with.
Carm doesn't like goodbye. She tells me to rap, but then she always extends.
I cannot rap it. I have to hold on.
Carm, real quick. I love when you call.
No, wait a second. I saw artificial intelligence where from, let's say you talk to somebody for a limited number of minutes, and then they can take your own voice, and with a perfect accent, they can make you, for example, speak in Spanish or in any other language that you don't speak. You don't need to know any more 6 languages. You just absolutely, this new artificial intelligence will be.
Carm, are you using AI in your day-to-day life, Carm?
Yes, I totally use it from morning to night.
Jody Johnston says, Joy, I like when you call Carm mom. That's who she is to you, and you're both so lucky. Yes, we are. Carm, what is this is a great question from Black Widower.
By the way, your sister doesn't like it when you call me Carm.
She's got a MYOB, mind your own business. What's a lady, Carm, this is interesting. What's a lady mensch called from Black Widower in Ireland, of all places? What is there a name for a lady mensch?
I don't know.
For those who do not know, a mensch in Yiddish is like a gentleman. Like
No,
I am a mensch.
no, not a gentleman.
A good guy, right?
An upstanding good guy.
Sidetracked. Lauren Scharf, she is a gentle woman and a scholar, as my mother would say. She's now a public information officer for Cherry Creek School District. She's also the social media manager. She's a former reporter and anchor in Colorado, Fox 21 News, WAFF 48, NTV News. Lauren, you like being out of news?
Yeah, it's nice. There's some days where I miss it, but for most days I do.
And same question as I had for Eric. How do you see this playing out over the next bunch of weeks?
I think it's going to be a waiting game. I think we're not going to know anything for a couple more months. I mean, it would be great if the 12th Judicial District Attorney would kind of give us some information as to what came out of the autopsy, but I think they're going to keep that close to their vest, and they don't want anything leaked from this case because they don't want to harm the potential case moving forward. So I think it's going to be quite a long time until we hear kind of any arrest or any charges pending.
And Martin Smallwood, there was no dart. He's making the point that it was just the casing, and maybe the dart was in fact used. Look at this from Ann McClure, bodacious stash. I hope the wife is watching and hearing all this. Last but not least, Carm, I will start with a question I ended with. Do you think that Barry Morphew is guilty of this crime? Will he ultimately be charged for it? And don't weasel your way out of it with some political
I am
answer.
going to weasel away. What I love most about the system is that you are innocent until proven guilty. And I would have to see the proof, and I wouldn't even know what I'm looking at because I'm not an attorney.
There you go. That was the final word. Quick programming note. Tomorrow night, an interesting show. Some people don't want us to have this guest. His name is J. Reuben Appelman. He wrote While Idaho Slept about the Idaho 4 murders. He really focused it on the victims. I don't think he mentions Brian Koberger until about 3/4 of the way into the book. He'll be on with a couple of other guests. And then 5 p.m. Eastern time, Great Scott. It's your True Crime Phil with Scott Duffy of the FBI formerly, and Detective Phil Waters, America's most respected detective. They'll be on 5 o'clock on Friday. We'll talk about the Long Island serial killer and all these other big cases, including Joran Vondersloot now fessing up to hurting and killing Natalie Holloway. I don't know if he actually admitted that entire thing, but he did say that he attacked her last I saw. Final question here, Carm. Was Carm mobbed by fans at Crime Con, which we are now calling Carm Con? Carm, what was your experience like at Crime Con?
It was pretty incredible because I truly didn't expect the warm reception and so many people recognizing us. And Joel said to me, after we met the first 2 people who recognized that, I said to Joel, this is already good. And then we walked further, and then other people recognized us. So it was very, very rewarding, and they were very open. They said what they liked, what they didn't like, and it was good.
Carm signed tons of autographs, took photos. She was hanging out at the bar late at night. She wasn't drinking, but she was hanging out at the bar, and she was inadvertently.
I'm so sad I missed out. That sounds like fun.
Lauren, come to Nashville, Crime Con in Nashville. She also inadvertently, repeatedly, not offended, insulted Dick Harpootlian, the lead defense attorney from the Alec Murdaugh trial. And that was funny to watch.
But you should tell in context.
What's the context?
Who was the prosecutor?
Eric's texting his friends, being like, "Get me the hell out of here." Go on.
No. But 1 second, because this is interesting tidbit for everybody. What's the name of the one who was in the band?
Creighton Waters, the prosecutor.
Creighton Waters was really performing for 2 hours in a band, jumping around in jeans and in a t-shirt. And he was the main prosecutor for Murdaugh. And then when he left, we bumped into what's his name?
Dick Harpootlian.
Dick Harpootlian. And I asked him if he's playing music in any band.
Yeah, and you also called him the wrong name, like you just did to his face, which was hilarious because he has an ego. Maui Swift, look at this, Carm. You researched well, Carm. Followed by freaking Saint Carm is in the house. Followed by LOL, Carm is good for business. She sure is. Look at this. Gen X Granny says Carm. Sadie says,
no, I am not.
Carm, it's out of control. It's good to be 84. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Bonnie Lee Lopez, we love you, Carm. Frankie Figs, Carm. Okay, Carm's hair looks great. Olive Heatley. These are all right next to each other. We love Carm. You kick our butts, Carm. Carm is hilarious. It goes on and on for eternity. We're going to see.
I apologize to the panel. I apologize, guys, because
I'm going to need your autograph, Carm.
Yeah, you are. And we're going to roll a show.
I told you what the key to all this is. You know, if you breathe in and out at 84, you are terrific. So that's what
Carm, do you have one last piece of life advice before we say goodbye? Think of something quickly.
I do have that. It's so trite and so known. Enjoy every day. It goes very, very, very fast.
There you go. Carm, when I ask you that, you always say buy low, sell high. That's another good piece of advice. Here we go.
No, I say that
throwing her under the bus.
Sarcasm at its highest level.
This is my Geraldo. Love you, America. Love you, Colorado, Denver, Moffat, I guess. Salida, Boulder. Love you, Tasmania. Of course, Miami, Florida. Thinking of Israel tonight. Until next time, guests, hang on for a moment.